Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, a pleasure to be with you again this week. And in a little while, we're going to be joined by an old friend of this program, Rhodes Cook, the author of the Rhodes Cook Letter, national political analyst. You've seen him over the years on ABC. Perhaps you have even subscribed. He is one of the most knowledgeable, down-the-middle kind of political analysts that I have known in the many years that we have been doing this program. Always insightful commentary on the political situation. We invite you to stay put. The Florida Roundtable begins in a moment.
Are you worried about your mom or dad living alone in their house? Hi, I'm Joan London. Listen, I know how difficult it is to find senior care for someone you love. That's why I recommend a free service called A Place for Mom. They are the nation's largest senior living referral service. Call A Place for Mom today.
To receive free information on senior living communities in your area, call A Place for Mom at 1-800-750-4356.
A Place for Mom offers free one-on-one advice from local advisors and a personalized list of senior living communities you can visit. If you have questions about senior care for your mom or dad, there's a place for answers, A Place for Mom.
Call A Place for Mom in the next 10 minutes to get your free ebook on financing senior care as well as free information on senior living communities in your area. Call 1-800-750-4356. That's 1-800-750-4356.
There's a problem if you drink and drive a boat. It never just affects you. Boating under the influence is illegal and dangerous. Save lives by staying sober. Learn more about Florida's boating laws at myfwc.com. Brought to you by the FWC Division of Law Enforcement.
This November, Florida voters have many choices to make, but Amendment 10 is one of the most important. Known as the Protection Amendment, Amendment 10 protects your right to vote for constitutional officers like your sheriff and tax collector, so they are elected by you and not appointed by county bureaucrats. Amendment 10 also protects families by creating the Office of Homeland Security in Florida to safeguard our state against terrorism, as well as protects veterans by preserving Florida's Department of Veterans Affairs. To learn more, visit amendment10.org, paid for by the Florida Sheriff's Association.
This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I am Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, a pleasure to be with you once again this week. And as I said, in just a couple of moments, we're going to be joined by our old friend Rhodes Cook, who is, in my view, one of the fine political analysts around the country, and neither too far to the right nor too far to the left, but he gathers and garners numbers and interprets them, and he watches trends. And I always enjoy his observations. So,
oh yeah, we've had him on a bunch of times before. So
yeah, we'll look forward to that. But I thought perhaps you might have noticed this. Older people. Just several days ago, we lost the oldest person in the world. And it was a woman who was 117 years old. She died in Japan. They didn't have to go very far to find the next oldest woman, just a couple of miles down the road to the next village, where Japan had another woman who was 115.
What is her secret?
Wow. Well, the article didn't say, but what it said, and I found this amazing, there are over 70,000 people in Japan who have passed the age of 100. I think that's rather astounding.
I know. I want to interview them all and know what their secrets are. What's working.
Of course, Japan, it's a record number of centenarians in their population, but it is also reflective of a lowering birth rate and an aging population in Japan, which some people see as a coming problem for their economy.
Yeah, I mean, it's already had effects on their economy, from what I understand.
So
even more than, we talk about that in the U.S., the baby boomers aging, and they're going to withdraw from Social Security.
Yep.
But it's nothing like what they are dealing with in Japan.
Oh, no. I have not seen figures for the United States, but I'm guessing, even though our population is bigger, I would be willing to bet that we don't have 70,000 people over the age of 100 here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I would doubt that as well.
Yeah. I know the number is increasing, but
of course.
I don't think it's that high.
I know one thing that's interesting about the problem in Japan is it's forced them to invest a lot in robotics.
Yeah.
Because the elderly people, they don't have enough nurses to take care of them.
Right.
So they need robotics technology to help take care of these elderly people.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting situation and one that we're going to have to watch. And I did come across another particular news story that I thought was interesting. Did you know that New York City is no longer the wealthiest city in the world?
I did not know that.
Any guesses as to what has become of? We won't make people guess.
Well, I would guess Dubai if I had to throw one out there.
Actually, it's Hong Kong.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Hong Kong now has more than 10,000 residents who each control at least, this is the cutoff, $30 million. 10,000 people live there who are worth $30 million.
I want to live in that neighborhood.
More. The number of ultra-wealthy people in New York City has increased, about a 7% jump, but it is about 9,000 residents in New York City who have over $30 million worth of wealth. And that is according to WealthX, a research firm that studies the world's wealthiest people.
I feel like your dollar probably goes farther in Hong Kong, too.
It probably, yes. Of the 10 cities with the most ultra-wealthy people, 5 of them, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C., are in America. Now, we know that Hong Kong's number one, and it's not, and they don't tell us where the other 4 are. But I thought it was interesting that the wealth of Hong Kong has grown so much that they have surpassed New York. Well, all right, that and a $5 bill will get you a nice cup of coffee somewhere, probably that knowledge. But this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And we'll pause along the network line and be joined by Rhodes Cook as our conversation continues.
Have you written a book? You can become a published author with Dorrance Publishing, the nation's oldest publishing services company. Countless authors have trusted Dorrance for nearly 100 years to bring their book to the market. Our professional team will edit your text, design your book pages, and create an appealing, eye-catching custom cover. Plus, our authors benefit from a custom book promotion marketing campaign that makes your book available where people buy books, like Amazon and brick-and-mortar bookstores. So make this free call right now to claim your free author's guide to publishing. Don't wait another day. Take one step closer to realizing your dream of becoming a published author and seeing your name in print. You've already written a book, so the next thing to do is make this free call right now to Dorrance Publishing and get your free guide to publishing. Call right now.
800-485-6003. 800-485-6003. That's 800-485-6003.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Wow, your flowers are gorgeous. What's your secret?
It's no secret. It's Bear Advanced.
You mean these blue bottles?
Uh-huh. I protect my beauties with all-in-one rose and flower care. It's insect and disease control plus fertilizer.
Really? What's this 12-month tree and shrub protect and feed?
Oh, I use it on my trees. It kills bugs for up to a year, plus it feeds. It's that easy. Hey, where are you going?
To get my own. I want a great yard, too.
Bear Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. Always read and follow label instructions.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And Michael, as promised at this point in the program, we are joined by a gentleman who has become a good friend over the years, and I consider him to be one of the fine political analysts in the United States today, and that is our good friend, Mr. Rhodes Cook. Rhodes, a pleasure to have you with us again, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Reagan, and I appreciate being on your show.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this, because I mentioned the Rhodes Cook letter. Before we even get into our today's analysis and whatnot, let's take a minute and tell the folks about your research work and how they can tap into it and be in contact with you.
Well, I put out a political newsletter 4 times a year on basically a quarterly basis that covers elections. I've had 3 published so far in 2018. There will be another one coming up later in October, kind of a pre-election issue. They generally run about 20 pages in length. One can obtain them in either printed or electronic form. You can get a hold of one by going to www.rhodescook.com, and Rhodes Cook is RHODESCOOK.com, and you can take a look at what's going on. Issues are for sale, for better or worse, on that score, but they can be purchased either by an individual issue or as a package of 4 issues, which would cover a whole year.
And I can tell you, they are just chock full of wonderful information, and you can digest these things, and you can become a political wizard and analyst after you digest them. Rhodes has done such a fine job of that over the years, and so here we are. It's 2018, and we're rapidly approaching voting day. And I'll just throw that on the table, and I'm going to kind of turn you loose on it and ask you, where in the world are we?
Well, first I thought I might start out with some what you might call midterm basics. First of all, a midterm election generally favors the out party, meaning the non-presidential party. The president's party rarely gains congressional seats in a midterm election. It's normally a question of how big are their losses. And those results are tied to the president's job approval rating. Generally, the higher the job approval rating, say 50%, 55%, 60%, the better for the president's party. The lower the job approval rating, if you get well under 50%, then it gets to be a problem. You're losing often dozens of House seats and Senate seats as well. I think the third thing worth noting is that the turnout for a midterm election is always much smaller than a presidential election. Roughly about 2/3 as large as a presidential election. And those that tend to vote are older, whiter, and possibly a bit more affluent than those that vote in a presidential election. Now, if you put the 2018 overlay over these 3 factors, the Democrats are definitely aided by history. Not only do the Republicans control the White House, they also control both houses of Congress. So if you're looking for somebody to blame, it's not hard to figure out who that is. It's the Republican Party. Second, the results tied to presidential approval, well, first of all, at first glance, that would benefit the Democrats because Trump's presidential approval is down. In the last Gallup poll, it was around 40%. maybe a tad higher in some other polls. But if you average those, it's still in the low 40% area, which is pretty low for a president going into a midterm election, and generally not good for his party. You're generally talking losses then of 20, 25, 30 seats in the House. And we'll see what happens in the Senate. That's often a bit more independent than the House in terms of its ties to the president. But still, it's generally not good news for the president's party if his approval rating is down, in the low 40s. We have a caveat, though, this year, in that Donald Trump is very strong among Republicans, and he's very strong on the issue of the economy, which many people see as in very sunny shape. But if you look at the, indicators on right track, wrong track, a majority of Americans think we're on the wrong track overall. And then when you get to the turnout, the third factor, that is generally a Republican ally if you have an electorate, again, that is older and whiter than a presidential election. The challenge for the Democrats is to increase the vote, of those that traditionally do not vote in a midterm election, minorities, younger voters. And they have to get a majority of vote from independents as well as basically a landslide among women. And polls show that is possible. So we have an election here where Democrats have some major advantages. They have a major advantage in history. They have an advantage overall in Trump's low presidential approval. They have a question mark on turnout, as to whether they're going to dominate the turnout or not. Because if you look at the basics of midterm elections, that turnout is normally older and whiter than a presidential election. So I'll stop there. But I think those are, the basics that come to mind, for every midterm election and, for 2018 as well.
Is there anything out there that you see that could hurt the Democrats' chances of maybe taking the House? You had just mentioned that Trump is very popular among Republicans, so that could hurt the Democrat chances. Is there anything else out there that you see that would get in the way?
The intensity factor, if you look at polls, and there was a recent one by the Wall Street Journal, which showed that the interest in each party's voters in participating in the November election has changed a little. The Democrats have been higher than the Republicans all year, but of late there are signs that the Republican interest in this election is picking up, so that it's closing in that important area, because an election really is decided by who votes. In that important area, the Republicans have closed the gap. I think as to why they might have closed the gap, I think that you have to look at this as a Donald Trump election. Midterms often are not about the president, except in a tangential way. Do parts like the way that the president is taking the country or not. But here, Donald Trump has thrown himself into this midterm election, made himself the key player, front and center. It's an unusual situation. And I think the Republicans are being rallied fairly successfully to turn out. And so the Democrats already, have their issues. They have an intense distaste, for Trump and his policies. And it has not been hard to motivate them, particularly women, both to vote as well as to run for office in this year. But as I say, the Republicans seem to be closing the gap a bit in that intensity factor. And we'll see where we go from here, because there seems to be new news like every day that supersedes what has just happened. So, 5 weeks or 6 weeks to go, wherever we are right at the moment, you think things would be settling down, but in this case, this year, they're not.
Do you think that the primaries in the various states have had much of an effect? We felt like in Florida, the governor's race here was very heated. The Trump candidate ended up winning, walking away with it. But between the two of them, and there were 5 Democrats, one, a daughter of a former governor, very well known, who ended up losing. But you could total up all 5 Democrats, and they didn't get as many people to turn out as the 2 Republicans. And Florida's got 500,000 more Democrats than it does Republicans registered. So I wonder about the effect of the primaries.
I think that the turnout in the primaries is a figure well worth watching. Generally, the party that gets the most votes in a state or nationally is considered to have a bit of an inside track, for the November election. When you look at the national numbers, back in 2010, 2014, there were several million more votes nationally cast in on the Republican side than the Democratic. And that turned out to be a preview of the fall election. The Republicans gained back the House of Representatives in 2010, and they won both the House and the Senate in 2014. So this election, you have maybe 1 million, 2 million more votes cast in the Democratic primaries than in the Republican primaries, which I'd say is initially a good sign for the Democrats. But you have individual states, like you're citing Florida, here where that was not the case. I guess there's 2 ways to looking at this.
I'll tell you what, Rhodes, hold on to that, and we'll come back to it. We have already come to the first break that we have to take here along our network line, and it is time for me to remind the folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable. We are a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is national political analyst Rhodes Cook. You can find out more information about his publications and himself to rhodescook.com. Stay put. Our conversation continues following these messages.
If you're in the market for a walk-in tub, stop and listen to this. Now you can buy direct from the manufacturer and save more than 50%. You won't pay $20,000. You won't pay $15,000. You won't even pay $10,000. Boca walk-in tubs are made right here in America by veterans. We're certified and virtually 100% of our tubs are made in the USA. A Boca walk-in tub is made from gel coat fiberglass. Other manufacturers use acrylic, which is basically plastic. We can deliver a walk-in tub anywhere in the U.S. and have it installed in no time at all. And everybody that calls right now can save $500 towards the purchase of a new walk-in tub. Call now and learn how to get a walk-in tub and save more than 50% off retail prices.
Call 800-308-4917. 800-308-4917. 800-308-4917. Again, that's 800-308-4917.
Florida's boating environment is always changing. New sunsets, new experiences that you won't find anywhere else on Earth. But one thing that never changes: boating while impaired by drugs or alcohol. It's illegal in the state of Florida. Boating under the influence will land you in jail, or worse, kill someone you love. It's just simply not a risk worth taking. Learn more about Florida's boating laws at myfwc.com. Brought to you by the FWC Division of Law Enforcement.
Your yard's days of being picked on are over, thanks to the science of Bear Advanced Brush Killer Plus. Its penetrating formula is specifically designed to kill hard-to-control brush, like kudzu, poison ivy, poison oak, and wild berries, roots and all. And the concentrate product even kills stumps, so your yard never has to worry about being bullied. Bear Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. BearAdvanced.com. Always read and follow label directions.
Terrorist acts and shootings are often described as great tragedies. They are not. We live in a world so concerned with being politically correct that they're afraid to call evil what it is, evil. Man's sin nature is as old as the Garden of Eden. Many love to blame culture, poverty, or lack of education and opportunity as the problem. They may have a good or bad impact, but the big problem is sin. Acknowledging our sin nature will show us our need for a Savior who changes us from within. That Savior's name is Jesus. He came to die for the sins of all who will acknowledge their sin. Faith in Him strikes a mighty blow at evil. So quit calling man's evil acts a tragedy. They are evil and God hates it. Yet thankfully He loves us in spite of our evil and sin. Jesus not only forgives us, but gives us the want to overcome evil with good. This is Brian Wright, speaking right from my heart.
All right, crew, let's get her dug.
Honey, you want to give me a hand? I'm planting that tree, remember?
No matter how large or small your digging project may be, no matter how urban or rural, you must always call 811 before any digging project. 811 is our national one-call number, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 business days before any digging project, so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. This includes natural gas and petroleum pipelines, electric, communication cables, and water and sewer lines. So before you do this or this, make sure you do this. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811. Brought to you by Common Ground Alliance.
From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is national political analyst Rhodes Cook. He is the author of the Rhodes Cook Letter, rhodescook.com. It is a quarterly analysis of what is going on politically in the country. And Rhodes, when we went into that last break, we were talking about the primary system and its influence, and you had a couple of points that you wanted to make, and we want to let you finish up that thought.
Yes. I always look at the size of primary turnout as one of the indicators of how the state might do in the fall. And as you point out, the Democrats had less ballots than the Republicans in this year's gubernatorial primary. But also, might look at it, too, as the a flip side is that the Democratic turnout, I believe, was well up from 4 years ago. And that you have a candidate who certainly is in Gillum, African American, a minority, somebody who you think might be able to jog that minority turnout and the turnout of young people, in the general election. And that's what the Democrats need. They need to change the shape of the normal midterm election turnout, which I've said several times now is older and whiter traditionally than a presidential election. And in a candidate like Gillum, he might lose big. You don't know. But at the same time, he might help, with the turnout factor. And from here on out, it's going to be all about turnout. And, of course, that's it on Election Day. Who votes determines who wins.
Speaking of turnout, you were talking about Andrew Gillum and the fact that he's a minority and he's young, and that might be able to draw out a different voter base. But Andrew Gillum is also a Democratic socialist, which is kind of new to the state of Florida. Do you think that could affect turnout on either side?
Well, yes. That could be pushing the envelope a bit. The Bernie Krat type of candidate might be, the bridge too far, in the general election. And we'll have to see, though I've been looking at some of the recent polls from Florida, and it seems like Gillum is holding his own. You know, that actually in several of them he's up by a couple of points. It's an interesting election in this respect. You know, I might just have a stream of consciousness comment here in that some things that you thought, you know, might sink a candidate in the past really doesn't. And, you know, being a democratic socialist certainly is, but, you know, Bernie Sanders in the primaries ran pretty well, not in Florida, grant you, but pretty well in many states in terms of, you know, winning the states and being a much more competitive candidate in the Democratic Party than one would think. So, I mean, you have interesting dynamics on both sides here, where you have, you know, on one hand, the Democrats running some very liberal candidates, at least by modern standards, but on the other hand, Republicans who are tying themselves very closely to what is overall an unpopular president. You know, they have hardly any distance between themselves and Trump. So you have these two factors, you know, which will be interesting to see on election night, you know, how they play out. Usually races are run closer to the center, you know, of American politics. But this year there are a lot of races that are being pulled, you know, either to the left or right. I mean, they're pulled to both ends with a large gap, you know, in the middle there, that the voters will have to decide, you know, which they prefer or which is less obnoxious to them.
And I think you've put your finger right on it. What we are seeing in the Florida's governor's race, we thought that the two candidates originally favored, Putnam and Graham, would have been both much closer to the center, and instead we have DeSantis out to the right and Gillum out to the left, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. Now, I wanted to shift a little bit to the United States Senate. A blue wave, it'll be easier for the Democrats to try to take back control of the U.S. House simply by various numbers that the Democrats have so many more seats to defend in November than the Republicans do. But how are you looking at the Senate?
Well, I still look at the Senate as a tough go for the Democrats. I think more and more people are saying, well, the Democrats might have a chance here. And I would still, you know, that may be the case, but I still think it's less than 50-50, you know, that they could win back the Senate. The main thing is that the Democrats are defending so many more seats than the Republicans. About, 2/3 of the 35 seats up are being defended by the Democrats. And 10 of those, you know, a fact that is often underscored by commentators, are in states that Donald Trump carried in the 2016 election. So they're on kind of hostile terrain, if you would. Those states include very bright red states like West Virginia, where Democrat Joe Manchin is running for re-election, Indiana, a Democrat running for re-election, North Dakota, a Democrat running for re-election, and Florida, which is really, I guess, more of a swing toss-up state, that still was a Trump state. And so if each seat that the Republicans can take from the Democrats makes it that much harder for the Democrats to win control of the Senate, because they have, at this point, a limited number of targets. There's an open seat in Tennessee that Bob Corker is giving up, that they have their eyes on. They're running a popular former Democratic governor. In Arizona, it's an open seat where Jeff Flake is stepping down, and Democrats have high hopes for. And there's Nevada, where there is a Republican incumbent who is basically in a toss-up race. So you have these three big opportunities for the Democrats. They're down now basically 51 to 49. That seems like a very small number, but the number of targets is small, and the number of seats they're defending is large. I think what they're trying to do here in the home stretch is put another seat or two that the Republicans hold into play. And one, kind of interestingly, is the Texas seat of Ted Cruz. You know, Trump's old antagonist from 2016, who Trump is now trying to hold off a rather young, energetic, and fairly smart, strategically smart Democratic candidate and Representative Beto O'Rourke from the western part of the state. And he has visited all 254 counties in Texas, and has got an increasing attention, you know, for his efforts. And Cruz, I don't know if he's intrinsically that popular in Texas. He still seems to be holding a lead, but it's in the single digits, and there's a question whether the Republican money that will be sent in to try to bail him out will in fact bail him out, or whether you'll have this fourth seat as a target of opportunity for the Democrats.
And when looking at Florida, you have Rick Scott versus Bill Nelson. And Rick Scott has actually been leading in some of the polls against Bill Nelson, who's an incumbent. How do you explain the success of Rick Scott?
Well, it's a toss-up state. He has a lot of money. He's a political outsider, I think, when he came in to the governorship. And I think he's probably maintained that image to a fairly good degree. While Bill Nelson, who's been in the House and the Senate, is probably viewed now as kind of the, ultimate insider. So you have this different dynamic there. And of late, it's been better to be an outsider than an insider. But I think in Bill Nelson, I wouldn't put it past him to pull this out. I think he's kind of a courtly.
I tell you what, Rhodes, hold that thought. We're at a point where we have to take a pause along our network line. We need to remind folks that this is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's talk and entertainment networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is national political analyst Rhodes Cook. Check him out at rhodescook.com. Stay put. Our conversation continues in a moment.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-321-5396. That's 800-321-5396. Again, 800-321-5396.
A pretty common problem in our area is black and green stuff on outdoor surfaces. You scrub it off and it comes right back. You need something that will keep it clean. Wet and Forget. It keeps surfaces clean for a year or more. Just spray it on and leave it. Make cleaning easier. Pick up a bottle of Wet and Forget today at Walmart, Ace, Do It Best, or visit wetandforget.com to find a store near you.
I love the ocean.
Me? I love a slow winding river.
I love the lake. Slick as glass.
But nothing compares to what you love inside the boat.
My family.
My child.
My best friend from first grade.
If you're behind the wheel of a boat, pay attention. That way your favorite water will always be safe water. Learn more about boating safety at myfwc.com. Brought to you by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's talk and entertainment networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day, national political analyst Rhodes Cook. He's been a marvelous friend of this program for many years. He has the Rhodes Cook letter. You can find more information about that at rhodescook.com. Quarterly publication, chock full of marvelous facts and statistics, and you too can become a political analyst simply by reading the Rhodes Cook letter, I do believe. But Rhodes, as we went into that last break, we were talking about Bill Nelson and Rick Scott. Bill Nelson perhaps becoming the courtly elder statesman of the state of Florida. One of the things Rick Scott is doing in some of his attack ads is pointing out that Bill Nelson's been running for election in Florida since 1972. And but anyways, you were saying he's kind of courtly, so let's go back and finish up that thought.
Yeah, actually, 1972 doesn't seem that long ago to me. So
me either.
Right. So that line of attack wouldn't work with me. But anyway, yes, I think courtly, you say, kind of an elder statesman in both his party, and he could take that role on more nationally as well. And I think we're at a point where many people think we need more elder statesmen, so to speak, ones who might be a bit less volatile or, nasty in their rhetoric and partisan in their attacks. And as I think that, this is just a hunch. It's not really built on any particular evidence, but I think that, the type of personality that Bill Nelson has is one that may ultimately prevail. But, again, it's a very, very close race. A Scott victory on election night would not be any surprise. But at the same time, I don't know. I would not count Bill Nelson out in the long run.
Do you think that the fact that Gillum is doing well in the polls, and if he can get a large turnout, would that help Bill Nelson as well in the Senate race?
Well, it could, yes. Traditionally, you have a few more votes cast in a gubernatorial race than, say, a Senate race or any other race on the ballot. But, yes, I think the more voters, particularly ones that probably wouldn't vote, if it were not for Gillum running, yes, I think that would help produce more straight-ticket voting, for the Democrats in this race. So, yes, I do think it would help out Nelson.
I wonder, on the national scene, as we said here in Florida, and I've alluded to earlier with the DeSantis and Gillum thing, we see a pushing towards the right and towards the left. Around the country, we were so used to seeing the moderates and the coming to the center by the time we got to Election Day. What are you kind of look in your crystal ball for us, and what do you see? Are we going to get back to those days? Was it Richard Nixon used to say, well, in your primary, you run to the right, and then you dash back to the center before the general election and hope you get there first, or something like that. How do you look at that in the days to come?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to watch, because you are having more of these left-right races rather than center-left, center-right races. I guess it'll be a lot will depend on who is elected and then how they will govern, in the next year or two, and how the voters of a particular state, take that. It seems to be less and less, though, of that need to run to the center, though. I think a lot depends, though, on the nature of the state. In the state, say, a more established state, one that's not changing very quickly, like you have up in the Northeast or the Midwest, you might have less movement away from center elections than you do, say, in a fast-changing state like Florida or maybe Georgia or California, across the Sun Belt there, where the demographics of the state are in considerable flux from election to election, and you're bringing more newcomers into the voting mix, people who don't have a tradition of voting in say Florida. The political parties too are not strong enough, to pull them into the mainstream of their party, and they're dealing with voters who don't want to be pulled into the mainstream by and large, particularly when you're looking at young, more minority voters. And, even voters who might be white, middle class, what have you, who are coming to Florida to start a new life, and so they are not consider themselves as encumbered by their old voting habits. So I think, a lot of this depends on the state. Ohio will vote differently than Florida, particularly in terms of the type of candidates they nominate. So I think that has something to do with it. But it is an interesting change. Always when you look at an election, you're trying to look at, okay, what is the new trend here? What do we have that's different than what we had before? And certainly, what's happening in Florida may be front and center as to a change, in the basic dynamics, the basic demographics, of American politics. And, of course, that'll take us into 2020, which will be, even a more high-stakes election than this is.
So let's say that the Democrats do take the House of Representatives, which, as you pointed out, is very likely. Do you think they move to impeach Trump?
No, I don't think they would. For one thing, it wouldn't make much political sense because in the Senate, you need, I believe, a 2/3 vote of the Senate, to actually throw a president out. And back in 98, when Clinton was impeached, the Republicans didn't get anywhere close to that, and I think they ended up, creating some sympathy for Clinton. So I think any move for impeachment would have to come out of the Republican Party. I think it would have to be Republicans saying, okay, we've had enough, and otherwise it's just a D versus R type of thing. And I don't see any, I don't think Democrats alone could pull it off. Mathematically, I think that would be impossible. And also, I think it just outrage at least a third, 35% of the electorate who are Trump loyalists and get them riled up for 2020.
Rhodes, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, but the clock always runs too fast when you're with us. Rhodes Cook, author of the Rhodes Cook letter, rhodescook.com. And let me say thank you for all your time this day. We know you're on a very busy schedule, and we want to invite you to come back and do this again once the dust settles and we head towards the end of 2018. Rhodes, thank you so much.
You're quite welcome, as always.
This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Mike and I have a brief closing thought following these closing messages.
Terrorist acts and shootings are often described as great tragedies. They are not. We live in a world so concerned with being politically correct that they're afraid to call evil what it is, evil. Man's sin nature is as old as the Garden of Eden. Many love to blame culture, poverty, or lack of education and opportunity as the problem. They may have a good or bad impact, but the big problem is sin. Acknowledging our sin nature will show us our need for a Savior who changes us from within. That Savior's name is Jesus. He came to die for the sins of all who will acknowledge their sin. Faith in Him strikes a mighty blow at evil. So quit calling man's evil acts a tragedy. They are evil and God hates it. Yet thankfully, He loves us in spite of our evil and sin. Jesus not only forgives us, but gives us the want to overcome evil with good. This is Brian Wright, speaking right from my heart.
This November, Florida voters have many choices to make, but Amendment 10 is one of the most important. Known as the Protection Amendment, Amendment 10 protects your right to vote for constitutional officers like your sheriff and tax collector, so they are elected by you and not appointed by county bureaucrats. Amendment 10 also protects families by creating the Office of Homeland Security in Florida to safeguard our state against terrorism, as well as protects veterans by preserving Florida's Department of Veterans Affairs. To learn more, visit amendment10.org, paid for by the Florida Sheriff's Association.
Unexpected expenses can hit anyone, and many Floridians turn to small dollar loans to manage those temporary financial challenges. When using a small dollar loan, be sure to choose a state licensed lender. Remember that borrowers have rights under Florida law, including flexible repayment options if you can't repay on time. Make sure you understand the cost and terms of the loan before you borrow, and only borrow what you can afford to pay back. For more information, go to borrowsmartfl.com. This message is brought to you by the Florida Community Financial Services Association.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Employ Florida offers resources and services to help you find employment.
Hi, Gary here. Employ Florida helped me improve my interview skills, plus write a great resume. I attended networking events with many employers and other industry professionals just like me. With the workshops and training found at employflorida.com, I was able to land a great job in my field.
Job resources, real results, hired. Employflorida.com. That's employflorida.com.
We are back. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And, I said a brief closing thought, and that's what we got, Michael. I enjoyed Rhodes' analysis of the thing. Very little to argue with when he looks at the numbers and what's going on around the country.
Yeah, he's always a great interview to have on because, like you said before, he's so knowledgeable of the numbers and the polls. We can ask him about any state, and he just knows.
Yeah, and he pretty much drives it right down the middle. He calls the shots as he sees them.
And he said he does not believe the Democrats will try to impeach Trump, which is, a lot of people think they will.
Yeah, and it would be a very difficult thing for them to build up the kind of numbers in the Senate where they could make that work. So before we run away, Michael, you have a couple of other venues you visit with people.
Oh, yeah. You can listen to my show, Beyond Reason Radio, where we talk faith, culture, and politics. It's on iHeartRadio. Just search Beyond Reason Radio there, and you can listen.
And in the days and weeks ahead, we have lots more to talk about. There's a big ballot this November full of constitutional amendments and all kinds of things, and we're going to try to get to as much of it as we can. Thank you for your time. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
See you again next week with the Florida Roundtable.
You've been listening to the Florida Roundtable, a news and public affairs presentation of the Florida News Network. The views and opinions expressed during this show are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's management, ownership, or sponsors. Please email your comments to reagansmith@fnnonline.net.